Hey there. I had mentioned in an earlier video that I wanted to talk this week about some of the common myths that I know I held, and I know other people, when I talk to them, have about starting their own business and why they can't, or why they think they can't, is really more accurate. And I can start by saying that I was definitely a reluctant entrepreneur. This was not something that I thought I could do. It didn't seem like it was part of anything with me. Like, I was going to work the job and do the job and keep getting promoted and move and do all those things. And I just kept feeling burnt out. And eventually, when I got laid off, I decided, as I was struggling to get another job and realizing I just didn't want to do it. That's kind of how I fell into this. This was not like my dream of owning a business, but it's been so impactful to have that, and to have the flexibility and the freedom that I have, and not just with my time, although that's amazing, but also with who I work with, because I get to pick. So the first myth that I hear a lot is that I can't possibly leave my job because of the security. And I 100% get that if you are relying on your paycheck to survive. And that's legitimate. I'm not suggesting that that part is a myth, but the part that is a myth is the job security. So unless you are, I think I've mentioned this before, unless you're in a union or have a contract, or are in a non-at-will state, or you've got some sort of legal protection, your job security is a myth. We all like to think that we have that because the companies that we work for are solid companies and they don't seem like they're in trouble. But that's not the only reason that people get let go. People get let go all the time for valid reasons and stupid reasons, and there's not a lot that you can do about it. So while your job may feel secure, it might not be as secure as you think. Now, that's not to say that everybody is at risk of losing their job, so immediately or imminently, but the idea that it's more secure to have a job with a company than having your own business, it doesn't really hold up when you start thinking about it. Because if your company does decide to lay you off, or there's something that happens globally, and there's a disruption and your company can't keep up, or they need to let people go, they're going to let people go. If you work for yourself, especially if you're doing like a service-based business and you have multiple clients, first of all, you're more nimble, and so you might see things happening, and you can kind of see what's happening with multiple clients who are in, maybe all in the same industry, and maybe make adjustments before. Maybe you're a little bit more attuned to what's going on, because you're nimble and you can do that. Or if one client leaves, you've got other clients, and then you pick up a new client to fill that gap. So you aren't as you don't have all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. You've got a bunch of different baskets and a bunch of different eggs, and you then have more security, even though it feels a little bit more precarious. The problem that happens often is when people start out on their own, they have very much a feast or famine cycle, and some of that has to do with whatever business you've started. If you don't have the kind of thing that is maybe something that you would be able to get a retainer on, and you're doing one-off projects, it can be very much like that. But there are ways to mitigate that, and that's not to say that it's perfectly secure to have your own business, but it is not less secure than having a regular employment, unless, like I said, you have some kind of protection. The other myth is that, and this is kind of less a myth than just a belief, that, well, I hate what I'm doing. Like, I don't want to do this. At least if I'm doing it here, I know what I'm doing, but I don't want to do this. If I start my own business, I want to do something new. And I was definitely in that camp. When I started writing, the last group I wanted to write for was anything related to land development or telecom or anything that I had been doing. I kind of wanted to put that behind me. But the fact is that it's one of the best places to get clients is in the area that you know. And it's not so much that I was didn't like what I was doing. In fact, I quite enjoy a lot of project management and development things. It was that I just didn't always like where I was doing it and for whom I was doing it. And that wasn't something I got to choose. That was based on whatever the company's fiscal prerogatives were and who their clients were and what kinds of projects they wanted to do. So once I started working for myself and could choose the kinds of things that I wanted to work on, it became much more enjoyable. And it wasn't so much that I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. It was that I was not enjoying where I was doing it and who I was doing it with. I didn't have any autonomy over that. And that kind of gets wearing and draining, especially when you have all of the other stresses of a regular full-time job that all those little bits eat away at you. Whereas even if you've got some of those things that you have to handle as a business owner, there's stuff that's not like the most fun, but things that you've got to do, or you are at some point able to outsource. But when overall what you get to do is work with people that you really like on stuff you really care about, that other little stuff isn't as draining. It just, because you're so full from the stuff that you get to do and that you enjoy to do or enjoy doing. I can speak. The other myth that I hear is about like startup and what you need to start up. And I think some of this is a little bit more like, yes, if you want to start like a tech company and you want to build like a platform or an app or like something that you need, you would need a lot of research and development money or people to help you because they have skills that you don't. That's true. I mean, that's a kind of a different kind of business than what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is taking skills that you already have and finding the people who need those skills and helping them. And so I'm talking about like a smaller service-based business. And that's not to say that it couldn't grow into something bigger if you wanted it to. I mean, that's great. More power to you if that's what you want. But there's nothing wrong with starting small. And that's actually a good way to start because then you kind of learn what's going on and what works and what doesn't. And you have so much more flexibility when it's just you. And so I started my writing business with my laptop. And, then I started getting things as I needed them, some resources. Eventually I brought on a bookkeeper that I network out to, she's got her own business, then she does bookkeeping for small businesses. And so, because I don't need a full-time bookkeeper, that's perfect. So she is doing exactly what I am doing. She's providing a service for businesses that need it and don't need it full-time. So those service-based businesses don't generally require a lot of startup capital. So it's not like you need a bank loan. Now, if you do need money to live off of, that's one thing, and that's kind of ties into the jobs, a little bit into the job security. But the idea that you need to have capital built up before you can start, unless you're doing something that actually requires a lot of stuff, that's not true. For most service-based businesses, a computer and a printer might be all that you need. Even if you need, I don't even know if you need a printer. So you don't need all of those, and you don't need a website. You don't need business cards. You don't need all of the things that we tend to associate with business. Eventually you might want them, but to start, you don't need them. I mean, really, when you start, what you want is an idea of where you can get clients, and you want to start bringing in clients, and you want to fill your small client, what completes what you need or what provides what you need. And then you can start figuring all of those things out. It doesn't do any good to spend a lot of time and money on a website if you don't have clients. The clients are where you start. And then amazingly, you get referrals, because if you're fun to work with and enjoyable to work with, and people like working with you, and they have friends who have similar problems, they're going to ask, hey, who do you use for this? In fact, I just started working with a VA, or social media manager, and as soon as I did that and I mentioned that to some other friends, they're like, oh my God, who are you using? And can I get their name? And so, when you're good at what you do and you're a good person to work with and people enjoy working with you, they're going to refer you. And that is one of the best ways to get new clients, because people want to work with people who other people have worked with and vouched for. So before you get into even any of that other marketing and stuff, you don't need to have this big presence that that you might think that you need in order to get business. Because you can set up your website and that's fine, but it's going to be a while before Google recognizes it. It's going to be a while before you've got enough on there that you're rating very highly, and it's got it's the better way is to go out there, get your clients and start going, and then you can tweak along the way. So you don't need as much. My point is that you don't need as much as you might think to start. And so those are the three biggest things that I hear over and over again. And there's ways to mitigate all of them if you have any flexibility or ability to be a little bit creative about things, and just kind of change your mindset into that. These things might be challenges, but they're not impossible and they aren't insurmountable. And it's worth the investment in myself to do this. Now, if I completely lost my train of thought on where I was going with that. So maybe I'll come back. Maybe it'll come back in another episode. But yeah, so I know that seems a little bit like, oh, well, you don't need to worry about all of these things. And that's certainly not what I'm getting at. There are real concerns, but again, they're not insurmountable concerns. There's ways to get around it. And so you can maybe, if this is something that appeals to you, you could start thinking that there are achievable ways to do this, and not that it's just an impossible task that you could never do. Because like I said, had you asked me 10 years ago if I could own a business and be successful at it and, make money and be happy and enjoy what I'm doing, I would have been like, yeah, right, whatever. That all sounds really hard and like a lot of work. But, it's not, if you do it right, it's quite fun, and really you get to build the life that you want. And that's a wonderful feeling. So I would love it if you wanted to follow along and hear some more. And if you have any questions, please pop them in the comments, and I will talk to you soon.